I can go real quick. Um, but just kind of piggybacking off of Chris's, we added in a few additional pieces for the load testing. So what we had been doing is really just sending HTTP requests, which is a pretty common way to run a load test. But what we additionally wanted to be able to provide what would render time really look like at the end. So Case 6, which is the tool we're using, has a nice ability to use Chromium to be able to run the tests. And so right now I have it running with non-headless, but we would actually run it headless. And so under the covers, it's just going through loading up the embed URLs. But what we're getting at the end here is a lot of that statistical information on how long things are actually taking to load. So everything you would want out of a performance test at the end of the day here. And so you see this has Chris's optimization of those first loads are kind of in that 4 second for that full round trip. And then the subsequent reloads are all in the like 1.8 second range. So we can use this to get some nice info, statistical information on how well we're doing in actual browser loads. And then the other piece we added in was generating of summary reports at the end of these. So these are reports that we can create. It's pulling a lot of the data out of Grafana and as well as CloudWatch. So ideally you now have a one-stop place to be able to go and take a look and see generally how did the run go, right? And so I'm pulling out error logs, things like that, so we can check and see, okay, like there were errors that occurred in model for this case, and you can just do hop directly in and then be able to run. So it's going to pre-filter for the time frame of the run itself, and then the same with the CloudWatch dashboard. So really just trying to give you one spot to be able to easily go and then start going elsewhere to get the details of what you need to be able to figure out how did a performance run go. That's it.
Quick semi-related question, but not directly related to this. Are we ever considering sharing this type of information with customers? Like obviously not the test side of it, but like all the metrics that you have here, we've heard demand for from like, deployed customers. Is that something that's easily liftable into our logs, or is it already there, or kind of how are we thinking about that stuff?
I th- I think we want to be a little cautious. I think there's kind of clean versions of this that we could start to look at sharing out. But what we're doing at the moment, these are all very controlled and designed runs. What probably becomes a path that I think makes sense to go down is looking at how do we gather some of this information from our production system itself and give them realistic, here's what's happening in the real world. I think that is probably more along the lines of what most customers would want to see. This is a lot more predictive and trying to ensure that we're capable of handling what's coming down the line, essentially.
Yeah, a certain very large prospect in Utah is going to be needing that. And then, like Nancy said, I think, Nancy, I don't think I'm disagreeing with you here. I think we could also publish some like benchmarking type of data, but as long as we make it clear that it's a benchmark, and it would probably be good in that scenario to talk about exactly how it was performed.
Yeah, I think if you start doing that, period over period of the exact same test run and be able to produce benchmarks that way, that's another potential that makes a lot of sense. And some of that's geared, that's what this is geared towards, is the idea of we'll be able to start running these regression runs regularly, be able to look at these reports time over time, and then figure out what makes sense to actually publish out to the world, if anything.
Oh, you predicted my question.
Probably same of like production would be really awesome at some point, because man, this would be a nice tool to have access to like, but I wonder even if we could like set it up in such a way, and I have no idea, to like just say, hey, I want to target just for 5 minutes this one customer, to like try and instrument something going nuts. Because we see like a dashboard losing its mind or a model losing its mind. Being able to get this might help us quickly like diagnose like, oh, it's this part of the staff, which would be really nice. So I know that's all down the road, but that would be, if even just having the ability to like turn it on for a moment or for a minute would be really powerful if we could. And I know there's a ton involved in that, but I also know the data might be a complete nightmare.
Yeah,
One of the things I would love to do is to also call it export so there's a lot of really granular timing spans that we keep track of when we're running queries. In addition, there's sort of the next tier up, which is like, what is the client and Remix sort of like, what do they see from the perspective of like, yeah, I got the first payload, I got the first byte, whatever. And I would love to be able to export those in reasonable ways, especially so that maybe not all of the granular timestamps, so maybe summaries or whatnot of them, but be able to turn that into something that the customer could use actually to do analytics on like all of their query runs. And part of that, largely the problem of that is collecting and exporting that data in a reasonable way that allows us to cost efficiently get that data and show it to people. So I think that like we could take what we have today and effectively like duplicate the table that's keeping track of it, but that would cost a lot of money and Colin would be mad at me, so I'm not going to do that. But and then we have other techniques we're using to some the data around that we could start to employ here, especially as the dust settles on some of the orchestrator work that I'm doing.
A new product, Analytics Pro for Omni, that costs an extra big.
No, people would want that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could. Plenty of companies charge a lot for that kind of data. Like they're just kind of like it's expensive, so we charge extra for it. And I think that might be a logical lever to pull. Like let folks who really need it pay for it.